In my experience, the creatures known as the Deep Ones, or human cult worshippers, are often the guardians of secret information or of some far larger threat. Investigators must often survive combat with these lesser threats to learn the secret of the threat, and the section entitled Tactical Procedures treats in detailed methods of dealing with such threats. Once penetration has been made to the heart or other organ of the phenomenon, and it has been confronted, the investigators must decide whether to attack or to run away because the horror is too great to bear and still remain alive and sane. Attack is recommended if it is within the investigator's power to defeat the opposition and accomplish their goal, whether the goal is to vanquish the blasphemy or just to discover information. Either way, experience has shown that it is a fairly foregone conclusion that on any mission, at least one member of the investigative team will be killed or go mad or worse. The life of an investigator is often short, but always exciting.
Consolation prize. Excitement.
He goes on to say, know your enemy. Find out as much as possible about the great old ones and their minions. An excellent source of information is the writings of the contemporary author Howard Phillips Lovecraft. His accounts of Cthulhuid activity, thinly disguised as fiction, contain much valuable perspective about Cthulhu and other horrors. Ding, ding, ding. Interesting.
That is interesting.
A well-prepared investigator arms himself with good friends, good equipment, and a good pair of running shoes, he writes. Let's see. There's another section having to do with personnel. And it just says things like each member should understand what he or she is to do in a certain situation, talk things over beforehand. Goes on to talk about language specializations, Latin, Arabic, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, Greek, all can be very important. Communication specialists, demolitions experts, mechanics. Never underestimate the value of a handyman, it says. Benefactors, archivists, photographers, and we can go into more detail about this stuff later. I'm actually going to send you guys a copy of this so you can read the whole thing.
Oh, awesome.
Sweet.
Apparently one of the favorite quotes of Frank Glupp was, "Sanity is a sawed-off shotgun." Talks about equipment a little bit here. Without a doubt, a weapon is one of the most important pieces of equipment for the Cthulhu investigator. Without exception, my investigators within the Theron Marks Society eventually led to a confrontation with some sort of outre horror. If an investigator can retain his sanity, a weapon is the best way to ensure that the carnage often accompanies these situations is inflicted primarily on the monster rather than the investigators. Naturally, not all Cthulhu's beings are susceptible to physical assault, but in our experience, investigators seldom meet those that aren't before defeating a number of those that are. Shotguns. Shotgun is the best all-around weapon, period, it says.
And that's true in real life.
Yeah, when sawed off, it is light and relatively easy to conceal, easy to wield, and quite deadly at close range. A team of investigators, all armed with shotguns, can defeat almost any physical threat. The greatest practitioner of the double-barreled fast draw in our group was Frank Glupp. Frank carried 2 sawed-off shotguns in shoulder holsters, concealed inside his exceedingly baggy trench coat, and could empty both weapons quicker than you could say Schubnigger odds. The double-barreled shotgun has the drawback of carrying only 2 rounds. On the other hand, it was seldom necessary for Frank Glupp to reload after emptying both barrels of both shotguns into something. The pump shotgun is the weapon of choice around the Theron Mark Society. It holds 5 rounds, fires relatively frequently, and is excellent in close quarters tactical situations, except when it jams. Some members carry special shells loaded with silver or with enchanted shot, which is
Ooh,
effective
enchanted
against
shot.
the undead as well as the all rifles and handguns. Theron marks rarely bothered with rifles or handguns, proficient with both. A rifle is more accurate at long range than a shotgun, but may not do enough damage to kill something before it kills you. If a threat is so distant that it cannot be hit accurately with a shotgun blast, investigators should consider waiting for the threat to close, laying in ambush, or running away. Handguns are as inaccurate as shotguns, and shotguns are 4 times as deadly at close range. This part is underlined. It says, sawn off a shotgun is fairly easy to conceal too, though not so easy as a handgun. And then handwritten in the margin says, not always. Dynamite. This
I can't wait
this
to read this.
this is a weapon of last resort. It is dangerous to the investigator and often counterproductive to the success of the investigation. See the entry about demolition experts and the entry covering tactics with dynamite. Flammable liquids. Bring flammable liquids in a variety of breakable and non-breakable containers. White gasoline, or benzene, is more flammable than ordinary gasoline. Alcohol is even better, but many varieties are often too difficult to obtain and illegal to possess because of the Prohibition Amendment. It's advisable to carry flares, flare guns, or guns loaded with incendiary ammunition to ignite flammable liquids from a distance. Although much more readily obtainable than dynamite, flammable liquids carry with them all the disadvantages and contradictions inherent to explosives. However, when the liquids can be used, tactics employing them are quick and deadly against large or slow-moving physical threats, or against packs of animals such as wolves, dogs, or rats. Let's see, it goes on to talk about automobiles. In the margin here near the clothing section, it says always keep raincoats. Investigators should wear leather gloves. Those protect the hands against insects and other bites. Leather boots also provide valuable protection. If a descent into a sewer or even more foul underground location is planned, investigators should consider investing in hip boots or waders. Not only do these offer greater protection, but wearing them may prevent an investigator from contracting a horrible disease. Carry spare clothing in the trunk of the team's automobile. After a difficult night spent breaking up Deep One rituals, investigators are tired and covered with Deep One gore and filth, and a change of clothes makes everyone more comfortable. Also, some team members might be insane. I can imagine you guys as kind of newbies to the whole thing, listening to this and being like,
It's such a practical guide.
it is a very practical guide.
Yeah.
And actually, I kind of thought long and hard about actually introducing this into the game, but I decided, what the hell, I think these guys will enjoy this.
Yeah, man. Politic real. It's
Yes.
still raw.
So yeah, after a long night, of breaking up Deep One rituals, investigators are tired and covered with Deep One gore and filth, and a change of clothes makes everyone more comfortable. Also, some team members might be insane. And the last thing the investigators who have been spared the ravages of madness need is to explain the appearance of the party to nosy policemen.
Sorry, I lost you guys. I don't know if you lost me too, but
Basically, it says merely reload. It says another reason to carry spare clothing is to kind of keep the nosy policeman away. If you got blood on your clothes or
Deep
things
One
like that.
cuts.
Yeah, or whatever. It's a good idea to have some spare clothing. around. Other equipment. In the trunk of the team's car should be carried picks, shovels, axes, jacks, crowbars, spare clothes, weapons, ammunition, a complete toolkit, spare tires, photographic and darkroom equipment, and always carry rope. And it says in the margin, perhaps it is better to keep a truck. That this is something that the Jacob Crown and Shield crew knew all about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, some of this stuff we've incorporated already. Some of it we
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah. A lot of it's common sense.
And it's cool though. It's
Stuff you've learned along the way. You know.
the hard lessons.
Yeah, I think the carrying the waiters around and the extra clothes, and I mean, it's all just great practical advice that, you know, I think we've deployed some of it. Others we probably have thought of, but we didn't do such a good job of deploying it. So this will be a great one to go through the checklist on, you know?
Yeah. And again, in the margin here, it says, don't forget wheelbarrows to pack all this stuff.
Perfect the process.
Each investigator should carry a backpack containing essential supplies, as much rope as he can carry, and a couple of grappling hooks. The team should bring spare canisters or bottles of white gas or alcohol. It says watch for treasury agents. Flares and flare guns. Every member of the team should memorize the team's standard cipher. See the section entitled Coded Communications.
Ooh.
There we go. I haven't done that.
It's not advisable for team members to carry written keys to valuable codes, as these can easily fall into the hands of the team's enemies.
Gotta memorize it. And once you have Alzheimer's, you're out.
The Theron Mark Society headquarters used to be in Arkham, Massachusetts, in the home of Dr. Jonathan Dare, until a certain Edward Chandler destroyed it. The society headquarters offered room and board to our investigators and contained a library. In the basement was a vault, laboratory, a firing range, and Mr. Franklin's quarters. Every team should have a home base, at least a temporary one. The headquarters serves as a rendezvous in times of emergencies, acts as a central switchboard to relay messages between groups of investigators, provides room and board for guests and for team members, and a place to store books and valuables. I think you guys are kind of on your way to that in Malta.
Who is this guy who destroyed it? And have they killed him?
Edward Chandler.
Yeah, who is this bastard?
They don't know anything about him.
Really?
Mm-mm. They assumed that he was either a Lord of the Silver Twilight or something similar.
And he's still out there, huh? Just like Carl
Could
Stanford.
Be. Yep, could be. Edward Chandler.
Did he blow the place up? What did he do?
No, that just says he destroyed it.
Wow.
It says HQ provides the team with esprit de corps and a refuge from certain death and madness. Unfortunately, if a team is successful or otherwise attracts attention to itself, it of course becomes necessary to change locations regularly to avoid attack.
We've done that. Bouncing around Boston and New York, man, like gypsies.
Yep.
What's up, Alex? Alex just got home from work.
Hey, Alex.
Everybody says, hey.
Evening, Mr. Alex.
And then it goes into a section on investigative procedures, talking about things like libraries, newspapers, cemeteries, churches, civic records. Mentions Miskatonic University.
Oh,
it does.
As a valuable source of information. If the staff is not all on sabbatical in Antarctica and can be convinced that the team is not completely crazy. It is often possible even to recruit a faculty member or graduate student to help with the investigation. One such student, Quentin Murgatroyd, joined one of the Theron Mark Society investigations, but sadly was slowly dissolved into a puddle after being struck dumb by Nyagtha. Whatever that means. Another team member, Dr. Robert Parker, received a fellowship at Miskatonic, and due to his library privileges became invaluable to many investigations.
That's probably the right job to have if you're going to have longevity in the Theron Mark Society.
Is he
The
still alive?
researcher at the Miskatonic University.
Yes, to be a research fellow at the,
You want to come on the field? No, I'm good.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Really? What's the guy's name again?
Dr. Robert Parker.
Robert Parker. There's a resource for you. If he's
Yeah,
still alive.
Yeah, the only one you know for sure at Miskatonic University, Miskatonic University Library and Museum specifically, is Dr. Henry Armitage, who has helped your group.
Are they aware of Armitage?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're also aware that Armitage lent your group previously the Latin version of the Necronomicon. Which, by the way, they would be quite interested to examine.
Come to Malta.
It goes into communications, witnesses, travel and borders, photography, coded communications.
That's one thing we've been light on is, coded communications and photography. I think we've almost, except for we were taking some photographs in Tulum.
Early on. The first iteration or the second iteration of the party, we had some photography.
Well, General Smith tells you that the Theron Mark Society has a standard code that they use, that they would be willing to teach you.
Yeah, well, sounds good. We'd be willing to learn for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but obviously it's not written down anywhere.
Right.
Tactical procedures. Weapons are the last line of defense, it says. Whenever preparing to enter a potential tactical situation, clean, repair, and load weapons. Carry plenty of spare ammunition and flares. Carry rope, water, food. Never put anything in a pack which cannot be abandoned should the pack be dropped to expedite flight. Keep valuables safe, especially books, which should be wrapped in watertight material. Spells. Realistically, the general continues reading. Arcane spells can only be used in a tactical situation when sufficient other tactical procedures are being employed, allowing the magician enough time and safety to cast his spell. Spells take time to cast, and the user can easily get himself killed in the amount of time it takes to cast a single spell. It is not possible to anticipate the use of a spell, at least get the magicians to a safe place or otherwise protect them while the spell is being cast. Of course, if a threat is non-physical, such as a dimensional shambler or star vampire, a spell might be the only available weapon. When such a creature is encountered, everyone who knows the appropriate counterspell should begin chanting immediately. Everyone must pray that someone will finish the spell before everyone who knows it is killed, driven insane, or driven away. Underlined, it says, all in all, spells are notoriously unreliable. And it gives an example.
All right.
Melvin Peel, a former NW1 security officer in Peru, joined the Theron Mark Society team and discovered that he possessed uncanny psychic powers. We were with him in a life-threatening situation and were preparing to flee when Melvin stepped forward and shouted, "Let me handle this." He then clutched his head, screamed, and apparently having seriously failed to cast whatever spell he had attempted, dropped dead.
Let me handle
Let
this.
me handle this. And he rolls a 99.
Man, I can handle this. Yeah.
Fumble.
That's almost the equivalent of like the redneck. Watch this.
Right.
You know, hold this and watch this.
Yes, it's the famous last words doctrine. The elaborateness of the rituals required to cast certain spells is another limiting factor, not only on the combat use of spells, but also on their non-combat use. Few spells can be employed surreptitiously, with minimal unusual behavior on part of the practitioner. Many more spells require formal rituals, wild gesticulations, loud incantations, and unnatural languages, animal sacrifices, and other bizarre and socially abhorrent acts to be successfully cast. In other words, it's impossible to successfully cast spells in Times Square, at least in 1925 AD. Take care not to be observed or overheard while casting spells. If an investigator is overheard by a layman casting a spell, he runs the risk of being mistaken for the very person he might be trying to thwart, or even being considered a lunatic, with the doubly unfortunate consequences of being thrown into prison or into an asylum while his quarry escapes to pursue its evil design.
Cover me while I slaughter this goat.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Cover me while I slaughter this goat.
That sounds like the Archbishop.
Yeah, this manual is really getting into the nitty gritty of things here.
Nothing going on here. Nothing to see.
Just slaughtering a couple cattle.
All right, the next section here has to do with dynamite, and it says the only real tactical use of dynamite is to destroy things that cannot be destroyed with small arms. The use of dynamite in tactical situations is limited by several factors. It is difficult to use underground, too close to a monster anywhere populous, or in an expensive or structurally unsound building, or if the investigators need to preserve certain artifacts or information. Although it is always wise to carry some dynamite, just in case, its use is strongly discouraged. Dynamite stands as the ultimate confession of investigative failure. Again, I repeat, dynamite stands as the ultimate confession of investigative failure. And many Theron Marks Society members have died using it, including Theron Marks himself.
Really?
So there you go, folks.
Wow. Must have been a desperate situation though for Theron Marks to blow himself up.
Well, here's what it says. It says one thing that everyone remembers about Theron is that he always smoked a cigar. Never a cigarette, always a cigar.
Yeah, so you could like the dynamite.
A cigar stays lit longer, he used to say. Whenever Theron needed a light, he always had one. He carried his cigar clenched in his teeth so that he could shoot with one hand and light a stick of dynamite with the other. It is somehow fitting that he went the way he did. Theron died in Castro Negro, New Mexico, in an underground blast. We were cornered by a slimy monster, and Theron covered our escape by raining dynamite down on the beast. But he lost his grip on a stick. When it fell, he threw himself on it to save the rest of the party. The creature threw itself on Theron, and the rest of the dynamite went off, and the blast caved in the chamber. Needless to say, there was nothing left to reanimate.
Oh, so you guys know how to reanimate as well.
Indeed.
You have resurrection spells.
Maybe you can
know about
the
essential salts. Yeah. We have some corpses. We have some party members.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a preserved party member. We would like to deploy that specific spell on, if you guys would humor us.
Yeah. Is that Alessio?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
We need someone to be able to guard the home base.
All right. Perhaps we can arrange that. Of course, there is some risk involved. He may not come back normal.
Of course.
there's always a risk.
Absolutely.
Um,
Spells are crazy.
Flammable liquids, again, it talks about it. Useful in many tactical situations involving physical threats. A breakable canister full of flammable liquid can be thrown at the threat in the path of the threat or at a wall to one side or the other in such a way as to spread the liquid over as much of the surface of the threatening area as possible. And the liquid can be ignited at the best moment with a flare or flare gun. That's pretty good advice.
That
That's
is good advice.
That's
We have
great
been carrying
advice.
oil with us in flares, but
flare.
we haven't used it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very
It
effective.
says, he writes, one of Theron's friends, Damon Hunter, devised a tactic whereby a non-breakable container is thrown at or placed near a threat and then ignited with a round of incendiary ammunition. A breakable container that fails to break can also be ignited in this way. Another variation of this tactic is to leave a pool in the track of a possible threat to be ignited with a flare gun or with a cigar, if necessary. Theron's own variation on the use of incendiary liquids required an Indian fire pump. An Indian fire pump is normally a piece of firefighting equipment, and it consists of a metal canister mounted on a backpack frame, and the canister is supposed to be filled with water. A tube runs from the canister to a hand pump, much like the high-pressure bicycle pump, which squirts the gasoline from the end when pumped. It has a range of 15 to 25 feet when in good working order, and an Indian fire pump is quite deadly and very accurate, whether used properly or improperly.
Wow, an Indian fire pump. Okay, that's another one. I've never even heard of.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what it is,
Yeah,
but
that's
I've never really used it. I don't think we've ever used one of those.
No, and that's a great idea too, man. To have something that you could spray. That's
Yeah, it's like you're spraying for bugs.
yeah.
It says Theron would soak down enemies with benzene first, then set them afire, all from a relatively safe distance. In the margin is written, beware fire vampires, though. Whatever that is.
I guess the fire doesn't work so well on the fire vampires.
Probably not.
One thing of note, use of flammable liquid weapons entail the risk to the user of also succumbing to the smoke and flames. Should an investigator find himself in the midst of a general conflagration, he should cover his nose and mouth to stay close to the floor so as to breathe as little smoke as possible. If no water is available to wet the handkerchief, the investigator should urinate on it. I kid you not, it could save your life.
That one I know.
Can we take maybe a 5-minute break?
Sure, let's take a break.
Hello.
All right, we all made it back at the same time.
Ew. All right, so there's just a little bit more here in the manual, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing it. Talks about star stones. So it's a portable elder sign, such as a star stone, is a useful item. Not only does it provide limited, keyword limited, personal safety when brandished at some creatures, it can be used to secure doors and thresholds. I was once trapped in a tomb with several other investigators by two 8-foot Egyptian mummified alligator men.
Oh my God.
We took sanctuary inside the tomb itself and held off the guardians by hanging a star stone over the door handles outside. We then poured lamp oil under the doors, and it spread out under the feet of the guardians, and we set them afire. We left when they had finally burnt themselves out. Talks about standing watches. Towards the end, it talks about monsters or creatures and the right weapon. Insane cultists present a particularly insidious threat, it says. Cultists are usually found in packs. The size of the pack varies in proportion to the ability of the cult to function in its environment and yet remain secret. Cultists stop at nothing to avenge secrets, so it is unsafe to attempt action against one cultist without proceeding thereafter to wipe out the entire local organization. Which you guys have been very good at, more or less. There may only be one opportunity to attack a cult. Make that opportunity count. Another problem with human cultists is that the law frowns particularly harshly at them. Unlike many Cthulhu's monstrosities, deceased humans don't melt away, leaving no telltale evidence behind. Circumspect activity, therefore, is usually called for. Many humanoid monsters have more than human strength, so do not let them get close to you. Fortunately, most humanoid monsters, such as deep ones, can be killed by normal weapons. Firearms are fine, though Frank Gluck took a macabre glee in burning deep ones to death, often subjecting us to his insane sense of humor with comments about frogs' legs and so forth. Deep ones carry spear guns, so beware. In the margin it says, or run them down in your something. I think it's referring to a vehicle, or run them down with your vehicle.
That works.
Goes on to talk about some specific types of creatures, none of which any of you present would be familiar with. So some of this is quite interesting. It talks about the fungi, the fungi of Yuggoth, or otherwise known as the Me-Go. And it says, what is true for deep ones is doubly true for Me-Go, who can fly and have technically advanced equipment, not to mention huge claw-like pinchers. Fortunately, since Me-Go are low-gravity creatures, they damage easily. A squirt of gasoline set on fire brings down a flying Me-Go quickly. Use a shotgun to kill them, it says. Talks about slimy things. Slime creatures are best repelled using flammable liquids, it says. Explosives are contraindicated for the obvious reason that it spreads the creature's slime all over the investigators and the surrounding terrain. Shotgun and other projectile weapons do little damage to these monstrosities. The real danger when facing slime creatures is the possibility of going mad. Talks about beings called Bayaki, which in your discussions, you guys have learned that the so-called Bayaki are indeed your airy travelers, learned about from the nameless cults.
Wow, we finally get the name.
Yeah.
I was always wondering about that, man.
Yeah, or one of them. Otherwise known as star steeds. Also mentioned what the Theron Mark Society called hunting horrors. It says investigators who run across these creatures are in serious trouble, especially if the encounter is outdoors where the monsters can fly freely. Try to get under cover and blast at them with rifles or shotguns. Pray that the ammunition holds out and that the entire team is not driven insane by the sight of the creatures.
That's the bearer, right?
Yeah, you'd probably be able to make that connection. The description given by Smitty, I mean, maybe one of you says, hunting horrors, what are you talking about? And he describes it as a serpentine-like creature with sort of a horse-shaped head, the long snout with almost umbrella-like wings. He says sometimes they have one wing, sometimes they have several wings. And this is what was described as showing up to the lake house that night in Vermont.
Yeah, that's the notes. Yeah, man, that thing was a hunting horror.
You know.
Wow.
Talks about other dimensional and non-physical monsters. And obviously physical weapons won't harm non-physical and other dimensional creatures like fire vampires. What is more, many such creatures cannot even be seen until they are feeding, when the blood coursing through their gullets becomes visible. Enchanted weapons harms servitors of the outer gods, and a starstone holds them off. Otherwise, the only hope is that no one has bound the creature to destroy your team of investigators so that its attention can be distracted with the sacrifice of an animal tied firmly between the investigators and the monster.
So, what are they describing, like rebinding it there, or?
I tell them about the dusk. I tell them about the dusk of the dusk that I made from the mummy, the spell. Are they aware of that?
Yeah, it tells you they've seen reference to that. They didn't actually know that it actually existed.
Yes.
Supposedly effective against other dimensional and non-physical monsters, non-terrene creatures. Yeah, Kyle. It says the only hope is that bound the creature. So that its attention can be distracted with the sacrifice of an animal tied firmly between the investigators and the monster. I guess it's implying that some of these creatures can be distracted with food. Yeah. So travel with sacrificial animals.
Yeah. Look, here's a tasty goat.
Yeah, here's a tasty goat. Throw live chickens at it or something.
So basically, these things are like a host of unholy offensive linemen, where you could put a Subway sandwich somewhere, and suddenly they're distracted.
Yeah. Mentions lastly, it mentions something called Chthonians. And General Smith points out that these creatures that you guys encountered in the caves beneath Craig Dube were indeed these creatures that they call Chthonians. They're worm-like creatures that live deep in the earth. And we believe, well, some believe, that they are servants of the great old ones. They vary in size, and judging by your description, they were rather small ones that you encountered. Um, and the advice given by Mr. Stalin in the write-up here having to do with Chthonians is don't look, run. The situation is to summon another deity or monster with a natural hatred for whatever it is that is attacking you. Survival in the vicinity of such a battle is entirely different matter altogether, but perhaps is less risky than the alternative. So I think you guys got kind of lucky actually, that they weren't large ones. I believe Bear actually, and Bear and Mr. Blackwood actually got some really good shots with their firearms in those things, kind of holding them back.
We tell them what we well, I mean, obviously we're going through this, we're reading, but we'll tell them about our encounter. I guess they already know about it though.
Yeah, Corso told Devlin about it when they first met.
So what do they think? What do they imagine it was that we were fighting? Do they know? Have they seen that in their?
They believe that they were young Chthonians.
Well, and what about the spell that was cast, the worm spell that killed Alessio, and the worms that came out of the toilet in the church? Have they ever seen anything like that?
No.
Really?
No, they have never heard of any kind of beings entirely made of worms. As far as the magic that killed Alessio, they don't know. It could be any number of things. It sounds like black magic. It's nothing that they have ever come across. Black worms.
Are they aware of Chantraine, or were they aware of her?
They were aware of her, yes.
Okay.
They are aware of her, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, they're aware of Chantraine, Belphegor. Not necessarily aware of the other players in Canich that I assume you guys have filled them in on.
Oh yeah, we gave them the full list.
We tell them as much as we can, as much as we know.
All the targets.
There's a sort of afterword towards the end of this thing, and Stalin goes on to say, when fighting Cthulhu's monsters, keep in mind that each investigator possesses a monster of his own, which is also capable of wreaking great havoc. This monster is made of moist, gray, convoluted flesh, has thousands of tentacles called nerves, and hides within a cavern called a cranium. This monster, called the Brain, is marvelously equipped with eyes, ears, a nose, and a lot of common sense. Brains can save an investigator's life when summoned in advance and used wisely. Every investigator should look before he leaps, think before he acts, stay alert, sane, and instead of working hard, work smart.
Good advice.
And I'll give you guys access to a full copy of that for your reading pleasure.
That'll be awesome, man. I look forward to reading the full text.
Yeah, as I said, some of the dates are off in there. So just take it as it is. But more or less, most of the Theron Mark Society, members of the Theron Mark Society, have been wiped out. There's only 8.
I know the feeling. We list off our casualties, the insane and the dead.
Yeah.
You know the feeling. It's high rate of,
high rate of attrition.
Yeah, I actually have them all documented right here.
But we have to say, the damage to the other side's been pretty significant.
Yes, it has.
We have put a dent.
Well, I am going to print this out for my plane ride so I can read it on the way to Denver.
Yeah, that's perfect, plane ride. That's a great idea.
I'll make a Dropbox link for you guys. It's a PDF. You guys can print it out and read it.
How many pages is it?
It's not that long. It's only about 12 pages long.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's short.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's short. It's got a picture of a shotgun-mounted flashlight. It's like a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun with a flashlight taped to it.
I'm not sure if we want to bring that on the plane and pull that out. Oh, here we go. Just some light reading. Don't worry. It's okay.
Right.
It's just a picture, people. Fucking
Yeah, dude.
get a hold of yourselves.
People do not get a hold of themselves, man.
There's some, and some of it's obviously kind of lighthearted, kind of geared towards Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu veterans like us, some inside jokes and stuff like that. It's like there's a quote here. It says, Frank Glupp was one of the all-time great hatchet men. His kill list reads like an index of the Necronomicon.
How long did Frank Glupp live for? Was he the guy that lived to 1924?
Well, I revised the dates. I believe I said he died in 1914.
Okay.
Basically what I did, you guys, because this is intended for a group that's playing in like 1927-ish, something like that.
Okay.
So as you're reading this, just generally take about 10 years off
Okay.
the dates that are shown. This particular document was written by Andrei Stalin in 1915. And actually, Smith would tell you, and there's also sort of an about the author blurb in it. Andrei Stalin was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, the landless son of minor Russian nobles. Mr. Stalin was an officer in the cavalry and fought for the Whites in the Civil War. Came to Boston after the Revolution and fell in with Theron Marks, traveling extensively through Europe, South America, and the Middle East. And, if his memoirs are to be believed, to the Library of Solano and to the City of the Old Ones.
What?
This man.
Ooh.
Yes, the Library of Solano.
What is the Library of Solano?
Dreamlands.
Oh.
Yes. City of the Old Ones.
Really?
This manuscript was found among his effects upon his death in 1919 of unnatural causes. Doesn't say anything further, just unnatural causes, whatever those were.
Unnatural causes?
Unnatural causes.
Probably.
Probably worms. Yes, like when you mentioned, like, you guys don't know anything about this worm thing that was done to Alessia? I was like, black worms pouring from every orifice? No, we haven't heard of that.
Well, now you have.
There's a new one for you, a new horror to contemplate.
We don't know what it was.
Yeah, we don't know about that one.
Welcome.
Yeah. So there needs to be some kind of coordination here. The main priority is to keep well, actually the main priority, that's probably priority number 2. The main priority is to keep the disc, the pieces of the disc safe. You guys have one piece of the disc with you.
Right.
The other 2 pieces, technically 3 because you chopped one of the pieces in half, are on their way to Malta at this very moment. So as I said, as far as they believe, the society believes that the Lords of the Silver Twilight may not require the disc to perform their ritual. It just
is a way for us to prevent.
Yeah, they think
reverse.
It may make it easier for them to do so if they possessed it, but they don't think that them not having the disc would prevent them from doing it. But certainly, we're going to have to study the disc to learn how it can be used to reverse the ritual.
So should we have it with us, or should we keep it in Malta and let the people there?
And that would
you guys investigate it there?
If
That's the question,
and
right?
how does the Ark of Lactos? Is that another artifact, or does it have to be used in conjunction with the disc?
According to the Sussex manuscripts, the Ark of Lactos is sort of another piece of the puzzle having to do with the ritual that's written on the disc. The full
Okay, with the
incantation,
ritual.
yeah, the full spell as a whole is contained on the disc and on the ark. They've learned that the ark is not necessarily um, as you guys maybe once believed, or past characters maybe believed, to hold the disc for some reason. It actually has some kind of writing on it. The ark does itself. That's integral in learning the spell that allows you to reverse the ritual.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So could the people? So if the disc is in Malta, could the people there be studying it and trying to
But
decipher
geez,
that
it just
part
could
of
have
the spell?
easily we could have easily destroyed that. So
Well, thank goodness we had
I'm glad we
comrades that
did.
prevailed.
Well, that is true, and actually, it's not clear to you guys or the society. It's not clear that the actual physical disc is needed.
Right.
The writing on the disc is
Yeah.
what's important.
So
And I believe that for the first two pieces, at least, Father McBride took some rubbings of the disc.
Okay.
So even if the disc were destroyed, um, you're just unsure. I mean, they're pretty sure, according to the Sussex manuscripts anyway. It implies that the disc itself may not be needed. And the learning of the spell itself is what's necessary.
yeah.
So you may get to a point if you're able to learn the spell, you could destroy the discs. However, the third piece that you guys have now is kind of the missing piece as far as Father McBride is concerned, because you guys may want to take some rubbings of it, like first thing, just so
Yeah.
you have at least a representation of what's on it. And they also say that they believe, they're quite sure that the language, it's actually two different languages, the Aklo language of the ancient serpent people civilizations in combination with relay glyphs, which is still quite the mystery. They believe that the key could be in the Necronomicon to decipher the writings on these pieces of the discs, and probably the Ark of Lactos as well.
So it would make sense then to send all the parts of the disc to Malta, as long as we have the rubbings, and then whoever's in Malta can study it, and whoever's on the road can study it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
It may take some time.
Yeah, but I think that way, at least we have the disc, the physical disc in Malta being protected by whoever's recovering there, or whoever's resurrected there, or whatever. And then we have the rubbings, and we can study the rubbings too as we're on the fly. And if we had to destroy the paper rubbings, we could. It's not like having to destroy the disc, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
And also, Father McBride and Logan Grant really aren't in that bad a shape. They were physically
Right. Physically
in
mangled.
bad shape because of the death rays that the serpent men were wielding. Which is another thing. You guys possess several of these devices. I believe 4 of them.
Are they aware of these devices? These guys, have they ever seen anything like
grip
this?
down on it?
Do you make them aware of them?
Absolutely.
I don't see why not.
They're pretty mystified about them and quite excited.
Yeah, check these out, man. We described the horrible effects of that we've suffered.
Nothing's more exciting than revealing your death ray.
Yeah, they contain like a silvery liquid. One of the devices that you possess seems to be depleted of the silvery liquid inside. The other 3 still have liquid in them. But to describe them, how they work, apparently they work like a handgun almost, and they produce a sound almost like a whip crack, and they shoot like multicolored beams. However, they're really not made to fit the human hand very well, and you'd almost have to use them two-handed. There's no aiming mechanism or anything on it. So, you know,
Maybe their weapon
General Smith
up
is like,
If you guys
General
have a
Smith
gun,
last
is
resort.
if you guys have a gunsmith in the party, you should modify him into some kind of crazy rifle-like configuration. Work on
that's
that,
a
General.
possibility.
Yeah, take him
Yeah.
and modify him. You know, so you set him in some kind of housing, so you have a trigger and an actual sight on him.
Yeah, I think we should study these weapons.
Yeah, Ronaldo definitely sees the advantage of having
Yeah.
some kind of. You know,
Yeah, they'll definitely work on them. I would guess.
So you guys have a choice, basically, at this point. Smitty's given you a choice. Old Kentucky, okay? He's given you a choice. He's saying, we're going to keep some people back here in Scotland to further investigate Canich and hunt down the rest of these bastards and take them out. Also, with the intention of destroying the cave system beneath Craig Dube after
awesome.
after it's fully explored.
Yeah, make sure you tell them while you're killing them that Sparky and Alessio say hello.
We will.
Blowing their brains out.
Yes, we will.
Please, thank you.
So they're going to stay back in Scotland. General Smith is going to stay here in Scotland and oversee that.
Oh, and a quick question. We know where Sparky's body's buried, don't we? Didn't we buy it somewhere?
Well, his legs are buried.
Okay, never mind. All right.
Yeah.
Moving along. Moving along.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, half of him was eaten along with the Miskatonic Starstone.
I got you. Okay, moving along.
Yeah. So
Okay.
he's not a resurrection candidate at this point.
Okay.
All right, sorry guys, I dropped off where we were giving a choice, and the last thing I heard was
Lee said, do we know where here's what General Smith is telling you guys. He's going to stay back. He's going to oversee the extermination of the rest of these witches in Canich, also with the intention of further exploring and destroying the cave system beneath Craig Dube, to prevent any kind of serpent activity. He says.
Oh yeah.
He's going to oversee that here in Scotland. And then Lee said, do we remember where Sparky's body's buried? Well, first he said, well, make sure when you kill these fuckers to tell them that Sparky and Alessio say hi. He said, do we remember where Sparky's buried? And I said, well, yeah, you remember buried.
Yeah, his upper half was eaten up.
Yeah.
So he's not a candidate for resurrection.
No, we don't want to bring him back home.
Although Alessio is.
Unless we can locate the leavings of the... It's over here.
I don't think we want to risk that kind of resurrection. That's like the transporter that doesn't go well. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've been resurrected without all my nutrients.
Matter of fact, I'm actually not quite sure what happened to Sparky's legs. I know you went back on the road and retrieved them, and all the buzzards were flying around out there.
I think we buried him. We definitely buried him and gave him a little quick ceremony, but it wasn't anything more than that.
I can't recall myself.
I think you guys buried him in somewhere near the town between Canich and Inverness. There's that small town there that you guys spent the night in. I think you guys buried him out in the plot out there somewhere.
Yep.
In an unmarked grave. So yeah.
And some smashing white tennis pants.
He's one with the Highlands now.
The superlative demise of Marshall Sparky Sparks. He was one of the good ones.
Tennis, anyone? Famous lines.
I remember Lee saying in the female force when he died.
Yeah. There's a lot of girls cried out in Boston. Oh,
no.
Why?
Yeah. So the choice is to go to California to find out what the Silver Twilight is doing there, and if they've made any progress in finding the Ark of Lactos, or if they have indeed already found it. And either way, try to find it yourself and capture the artifact, because it will be we believe to get the entire picture of the spell that will be necessary to reverse the ritual. Either that, or head to Salk Harbor, Maine, and visit this man, Christopher Edwin.
Can we do both?
Who claims?
Can we do both? Can we, on the way, can we stop? And we are going to have to, I imagine, travel across the Atlantic to get. Are we going to go the other way?
Yeah, well, I mean, the plan is for Stuart Devlin to accompany you, at least for the travel portion of it. The prophecy, the airship prophecy, is capable of crossing the Atlantic in about 2 days.
Wow.
That's awesome. Get up in the Gulf Stream and boogie across, huh?
Is the only inherent danger, of course, is weather. Although Devlin is a quite capable pilot, and it is October. Usually, the bad weather in the North Atlantic is starts around late November. So there is still time to travel by dirigible across the Atlantic.
Okay, man.
Yeah, I think they travel at like 65 miles per hour. So it takes about 2 days to cross. So he could New York or wherever you guys want to go.
So we stop and check this guy out, man. I mean, he could be a possible ally if it's a trap. Hard to believe it would be a trap. What do you think, General?
Well, he says, as I said, we've been trying to vet this guy to figure out who he is, and we haven't really had much luck.
Is that unusual? Is that unusual in itself?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I mean, every once in a while we are contacted by more or less anonymous people with anonymous tips, and sometimes, this information can go a long way into furthering our investigations. But really, all they have to go by is this letter that was addressed to one of their members. And again, it says, "I have read of your exploits and wish intently to see you. I have some slight occult knowledge myself, and am aware of the danger that you and your comrades may be in from the Silver Twilight. Please accept the enclosed train tickets to come and meet me immediately in Salk Harbor, Maine. I am wealthy, and I would be only too glad to help others to defend the world against the monstrous evil of the Elder Ones. I expect you shortly. Sincerely, Christopher Edwin." So just the contents of the letter would lead you to believe that he does have some mythos knowledge. How legitimate it is.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a Lovecraft character ploy. They send you the ticket.
The suspicion.
You show up. Yeah.
Kyle thinks it's a trap.
But yeah, Lee, to answer your question, you really could do both.
Right.
Time is kind of the essence and the matter of the Ark of Lactos, of course. But Maine is kind of on the way. Even if you were to spend a day.
I think let's spend a day doing that, or 2 days, but then get back on the road to Ark of Lactos.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it's worth checking out.
Okay. Let me see here.
I asked Stuart Devlin, I'm like, when we get to the States, you should definitely like mount the 30 caliber on the front of this thing
Well,
and shoot
says
stuff
you have
out of the air.
he says the problem is that we couldn't refit this particular airship to use helium.
Oh, so it's using okay, I got you.
It's
Never
using
mind. Understood.
highly flammable.
Understood.
I'm comfortable with people who are skilled with small arms
Right, I got you.
being on board, but unfortunately, mounting any medium or light or medium machine guns like that, I think, could be devastating to
A short flight.
should something bad happen.
I got you. Yeah.
But we do have plenty of armament here. We've got plenty of ammo, plenty of weapons, and plus, what I sent you guys as well. You guys have a ton of shit.
We do.
Yeah, which while Logan's recovering, he'll let somebody from the party who's proficient with rifle take the AK.
Sure.
All right.
Corso will grab that. He's got rifle shotgun.
I know Bear's strongly considering picking up a shotgun after all this shotgun reading we did earlier.
Is Bear good with the rifle?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
But
let him have the AK. Let him have the AK.
I think, I don't know if he...
Yeah, give Bear the AK, man.
Take a look at my character sheet, man, and see what I got, because...
I'm doing something right now.
I've got my
Let's see.
30 caliber lever action.
Yeah, Bear's got firearms, rifle, shotgun, 60%. Handgun, 45%. Well, you have some check skills too. We haven't rolled for check skills tonight.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and do that, you guys? It looks like I don't think Corso has any checked at this moment. I don't see any checked anyway, but Corso, you can, or Lee just dropped. Kyle, you can go ahead and do your skill checks and your luck check.
Damn, that was luck.
Goes down to 16 luck.
Damn it. Made that too.
Nice shot.
Yeah, that's perfect, but not what I wanted. Let's see. Yay, spot hidden. Hooray.
Hey, Lee, we're doing skill checks real quick. I don't think Corso has any skills checked, but you can make a luck check.
Okay.
Your luck is at 16. So try to fail that one if you can.
What about party members that are recovering, like Logan, and his luck's really low? Can we do a luck roll for him every week, or?
Yeah, when I between now and when I leave for Colorado, I'm going to be working out all that stuff.
Okay.
And I'm probably just going to do it kind of arbitrarily. I'm not going to do it like by the book or anything. I'll be like, oh, well, it's been such and such time, and he gets back this much luck. All right, you got 5 luck points back.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
Very good.
I got 7 to my spot hidden roll. That was good.
That is good. It's good.
That's good.
All right, so we have decided to go to Salk Harbor, Maine. And
yeah, what's Salk Harbor, Maine like?
It's probably very pretty in the summer and very cold in the winter.
yeah,
It's probably a fair comment on all of Maine.
Yeah, it's probably gorgeous in the summer and an absolute disaster, Arctic disaster in the winter.
It sounds about right.
so Devlin figures that the best thing to do traveling across the Atlantic is kind of take more southerly arc, okay, because too far north, you're going to risk some bad weather. So he's going to kind of take an arc towards the coast of the U.S. and then zip up the coast. And he figures probably the best place to disembark would be Massachusetts, probably in the bottom somewhere.
Okay. They have Zeppelin parking there?
Well, they have contacts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a place, arrangements to house the Zeppelin, and then you guys could take a train up to Salk Harbor. It's only like a 3-hour trip.
And we can take advantage of the tickets that Mr. Edwin sent us.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, indeed, and close with the letter or some first-class train tickets.
Oh, first class, great, man. So that we have access to the bar car.
Yes, you do. Well,
Nice.
Well, before we take off, can we stop by someplace? I'd like to pick up some of these items that they talked about in the manual, like the leather gloves. I think is an awesome thing, like a spare change of clothes.
sure.
Grappling hooks.
Keep in mind, since you're going to be traveling by train, I mean, you don't have to travel by train. It would take a little longer to travel by automobile, but at least that way you could have your Cthulhu kit with you. If you're going to travel by train, we're talking, a bag or two. And
We'll get a car because Corso's got a good driving skill. So we get a car, man.
Okay.
We can load up whatever we want.
Right. So, John, then let's just figure out what you guys are, because you make the Atlantic flight, no problem. Devlin flies you up the coast. It is quite chilly up here on the trip, but Devlin's got some extra, heavy clothing and stuff that he can loan you guys for the trip. He also has Terrence Garby with him that helps man the ship.
Terrence.
Terrence, yes.
Yeah. I try to talk to him a little bit, see what kind of.
Yeah, Terrence, talkative guy.
Is okay, pretty quiet.
He's pretty quiet. He is interested to hear about your exploits in Canich. And of course, when you in your first discussions with him, he was quite sad to hear about his uncle Hancock and what happened to him. And he hates the witches just about as much as anybody at this point. But from what you know, I mean, maybe I'm thinking there's maybe a side conversation, Corso and Devlin, where Devlin told you that Garby is essentially has been working as a double agent. He works for British military intelligence.
Right.
He was an intelligence officer in the war for the French, and he's got a lot of contacts. He's a spy, basically, is what he is.
Right.
And just recently, within the last few months, he's hooked up with the Theron Mark Society, and has been working with General Smith and the others, basically full time. And he's been with Devlin on their exploits in the last few months too. He is with Devlin in New York for Look to the Future. But he's not a very talkative guy. He doesn't really talk about anything personal about himself. But he is very interested in hearing about what you guys did in Canich. And when you tell him about the body that you guys found at the Hancock dig, remember the body that you guys dug up?
Yeah.
And you guys thought Hancock's assistant Chisholm. He seems to think the same. That's probably the most likely explanation. But they killed both.
That's how they do.
Yeah, so he's quite upset about that. And
Did Logan? I'm assuming we're having this conversation on the Zeppelin. Did Logan have a chance to talk to Terrence?
We make sure he knows that they paid a price, you know.
Well, no, I mean, you mean Bear, Kyle? Because Logan's on a different ship.
Right, yeah. Before then, did they ever get a chance to talk?
No.
It sounds like they have like some in common, you know.
No, not really. I think the first contact you guys had with Garby was when he sent you the original Hancock letters.
Yep.
And he was connected to Alessio. He's done work for Alessio, spy work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming that Garby is the character that Alex is going to be playing.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
And then we all get together. So
yeah, that'll be cool, man.
I'd rather just kind of let him play it out, you know.
Gotcha.
But he is kind of a quiet guy.
Well, I think he started out being a quiet guy, but when Alex takes over, he won't be.
Probably won't be. Once he gets into the swing of things. But for
He's
right
going to
now,
open up socially.
Yeah, but for right now, he's kind of Devlin's partner, you know.
Right.
Try getting you guys to Maine and wherever else you need to go. For the time being, what I kind of see happening. Interesting. I thought about this when we get to the point where things really start ramping up to the end of this campaign. You guys could possibly. And like I said, this campaign may wrap up when we all meet in Colorado, depending on how much we play. I'd like to play as much as possible personally, but just stay in Colorado, and I can see you guys maybe playing 2 characters each at the end of this. You know what I'm saying? Like Lee,
it kind of looks like that's where it's headed, you know?
Yeah, like Lee playing Corso and Alessio once he's resurrected, and Kyle, you playing Grant and Bear, and Alex playing maybe Garby and maybe Casey if he comes back in that way, and Tom and Helsing, you know, and or whatever, you know. So, and actually that would be the way to do it, because of course the end of the Call of Cthulhu campaign is deadly as fuck. So
is Pumpkin gonna come back?
Well, I figured by this time it's been a while since Van Helsing left. At this time, Van Helsing has kind of been receiving private care, I believe, in Belgium, and he has since traveled to the United States, to Vermont, and he's visiting with Pumpkin right now, which is helping him with his issues with reality.
Hopefully, he'll say hello to Jacob too. Hello, Jacob.
Yeah, I don't know if Jacob's allowed visitors.
Here's a flute for you. Play some music, Jacob. Here you go. Here's a flute.
Yeah. No, I think Jacob's like in maximum security detention, padded room kind of shit.
Right.
He's probably all drugged up most of the time, I would imagine. They keep him sedated.
And he's just thinking of the Dreamlands. That's his only goal.
Yeah.
It's about finding a little space under his bed at night where he can sneak into the Dreamlands.
Yeah, I've been actually working on sort of an epilogue for, you know, at the end of this campaign for the characters who have participated in it but haven't really come back into the game, like Jacob and like Ambassador Dalaran, maybe some others before the end. And there'll be like a little epilogue about, you know, what's happened, and maybe some.
It's going to be like the end of the Animal House.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, cool.
But maybe even beyond that, because there's a possibility. I haven't decided yet, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll just kind of play it organically. At the end of this campaign, if anybody does survive, which I doubt, at least the characters who don't actively participate in the climax of this whole thing may be able to be carried into future games, you know, depending on what they are. So there's maybe a slight chance that Jacob Crowninshield could come to sanity, or maybe he could become a fucking villain NPC in a future scenario.
See, that's what I always think of.
Well, like I said, his idea, at least in his mind, he remembers the Dreamlands, he knows there's got to be some way to get there from the physical plane. So that's his focus, you know, when he's not thinking about stabbing people and
yeah, and
killing the gods.
You've mentioned that before, and that's a distinct possibility too, because I would like to do a Dreamlands adventure, and that could be a part of that. Jay could definitely be a part of that.
Yeah. Because you know, in the physical plane, he's a Mad Hatter, but in the Dreamlands, he could be doing a whole other little adventure, you know. Or
nothing is better than the wine from the Men of Ling.
Exactly. Yeah. He remembers the ruby, and remember, we still have that ruby decanter.
No, I don't think you have the decanter. I do believe you have a ruby, though.
That's right. We have rubies.
I'd have to go back and look at my notes.
Yeah,
but...
no, you're right. We don't have the decanter, but we do have rubies.
You will see. You will see. Where are we going?
Why are you so impatient? You men. You are so funny. Yeah, that adventure was a trip, dude. Yeah, I do believe you guys have a more or less priceless ruby. Yeah, think about it.
I think we have a couple. Didn't we get several?
I think there were multiple rubies, yes.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I can remember my suspicious mind coming back during that time too, like the rubies, they're attracted to the rubies, or something.
That's good too, man, because that's cash we need if we ever need to sell that stuff. Man.
Yeah, priceless ruby would probably fetch a pretty good price.
You also have the golden medallions.
Yep.
Which you haven't figured out exactly what they even are. You do know that they had something to do with being able to come back through the portal at Bendal Gloom.
I guess we should share that information with these guys too, huh?
Yeah. We should give them a full brief or full access. They can know everything.
I'm glad we brought that up. Because in fact, what Smith tells you, he's quite astonished actually that you guys possess these things. And he says, in our studies, we have found out that these golden medallions, they're golden medallions of, you know, the black goat, Shub-Niggurath. And he says that they're purported to allow assistance when using magic having to do with the mother.
Really?
Yes.
So any spell that would be associated with
Shub-Niggurath, yes.
You would get bonuses for casting.
You use the term mother.
The black goat, the mother. The
black goat is the mother.
Yeah, the mother of the woods.
Goat of the woods with 1,000 young.
Yeah. Yeah, the crazy fertility.
Call her. Shub-Niggurath, some call her. Yes, purportedly these golden medallions, I mean, as you can see when you look at them, they do portray sort of a stylized image of a tentacled looking monster with hooved feet, which to most people who know anything about it would represent a dark young of her brood. But we have found out that they actually represent the deity herself, and they can assist or enhance any kind of magic that's used in her name or to her. Although we have never seen one or possessed one. And I think you guys have 4 or 5 of them left. Yeah. So that's something to know. And start wearing those around your neck. You never know when you might need them. They're also probably quite valuable.
We're gonna look like Flava Flav.
Yeah.
Have big, no clocks. This time it's rubies and gold medallions.
Yeah, I'd have to go back in the video and see if I can find out about those rubies, because I thought I made a note about them, but
Yeah, I think there's more than a couple. I think there could be as many as 5.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. It's either
You guys
5
have
or 1. I can't remember.
I
Right,
think it's
yeah.
definitely not 1. I think there's definitely more than 1.
Oh, wait. Oh, robes. Thought it said rubies. 4 ounces, 2 4-ounce bottles of cocaine.
The doctor has that as recovery medicine.
Gate box.
I don't know, man. I don't think it would take very long for the doctor to blow through an ounce.
No, he's pretty liberal. He's pretty liberal with his cocaine use.
Yeah,
He is a part of a group of responsible cocaine users.
Yeah, he's not Dr. Roxo, but
frequent
he's not afraid to throw down.
Yeah, I think at this point though he's probably somewhat rehabilitated, but we'll see where that goes when he comes back. He'll probably go back to his old ways, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, man. From the wagon right into the snow pile.
He's
It
got
seems
dynamite.
like the excessive cocaine use probably had a little bit to do with his bouts of insanity.
Yeah, what's a little cocaine psychosis?
All right, what do we got here? About 20 minutes? All right. So the trip across the Atlantic is uneventful. Thank God.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Devlin, by the time when you guys see the coast, like North Carolina, Devlin's like, man, I was almost sure like a hunting horror was going to come after us or something at some point. And he kind of does his little. He's Catholic, so. So you guys head up the coast, north of Boston, small little harbor town there, and land the Zeppelin. And basically now we just kind of need to take a little stock of what you guys are going to take up there with you, within reason. It won't be difficult. I mean, you guys still have Crown and Shield money, I believe. And I mean, actually, it may be running a little bit low at this time, so now may be a good time to contact Jacob's banker, David Lee Roth, and see if you can get a re-up
I
on
forgot
that.
about the booze and bop. You guys need a deposit. What's happening to you?
Get a little. The will said exactly.
To the doctor, and since he's relatively sane now, right? Has he gone through
Well,
treatment?
didn't you create like some kind of like foundation or something like that?
Yeah, well, that was
Isn't
the intent for the doctor to create the foundation, and then we could draw on the funds, for purchasing the building in Malta, and then also, whatever kind of investigative funds we needed.
Okay. So again, I believe the Crown and Shield estate was worth, I think it was like at least 800,000 in cash.
Yeah.
So let's start with that. How much cash are you guys going to pick up here?
I don't think we need more than 20 grand, 25 grand.
25 grand would be plenty.
That's a chunk of change. So yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll get 25 grand. We'll get maybe 5,000 of it in gold florins or Swiss francs.
And gold?
Yeah,
okay.
in gold. Mm-hmm. I think about $5,000 worth of it in gold. The others in cash.
Okay. Which would be plenty to purchase a nice Packard Twin Six.
Yeah.
Or a really nice truck.
Or a nice truck.
Per the manual.
Yep.
Bear's all in on the protocol.
Yeah. Yeah, Bear's checking the manual. So a pickup truck.
It's a Packard pickup truck.
I think Ford makes the best pickup truck at this point.
Yeah, we'll go forward with a cover on it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Served us well with the bloody tongue.
All right, and what are you packing into the truck?
let's see.
Since we got the truck, I'm gonna take all my goodies.
Yeah, pretty much everything on my carry.
I mean, as far as like my fight man stuff, you know.
Due to Devlin's wily ways, you're all able to bypass customs and all that shit. So you've got everything that you had with you in Scotland, on the airship. You're able to unload it all.
Bear's got the AK, right? Bear's got the AK, right?
Well, I was just about to ask you, what's your rifle firearm?
Let's see. Firearm is going to be 65. Yeah.
65. Why don't you take it? Because you've got 5% better than I do, and I'm pretty loaded out. I've got some good firearms with me. So
okay, so instead of the 30-06 Sean that I have on my sheet, okay. I'll switch that out for the AK.
Okay.
I mean, we could switch on and off. Tonight he gets it, tomorrow, whatever.
Sure.
Or in Maine he has it, and then out in the desert, Bear can have it. His home turf.
Okay. I believe you guys have various shotguns, handguns, and a Tommy gun.
Brass knuckles hunting knife.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about besides small arms? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I'll get a jerry can of gasoline, and we'll take the advice and get some mason jars full of gas, and make sure we have the flare gun and some rounds for it.
Yeah, I've got Bear has a flare gun and 5 flares of all varieties.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was thinking, does somebody have a double barrel sawed-off shotgun I could have?
I believe Mr. Blackwood does.
Or we can just stop at any hardware store, man, and walk in and get a saw and a double barrel and let's top up to the car.
I'll take the double barrel shotgun and a hacksaw, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And 2 boxes of ammo.
Yeah. I want a bunch of this medical tubing, some razor wire, some gloves,
with jerry cans,
10
gallons of gas.
Yeah, for home security. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I wrote down the double barrel shotgun, but I don't have the stats for it, so we can deal with that later.
Yeah, we can deal with that later. Dynamite.
Yeah, we'll carry some. In a crate that's packed with sawdust appropriately. Not on Tom's chest.
All right, so a crate of 26 dynamite, something like that.
Yeah, and blasting caps in a separate 5 container and some fuse.
5 stick bundles.
Yeah, that sounds right.
All right. Raincoats.
Yeah, it's like going to a Gallagher concert or something.
Right.
just with gore coming at you.
Who's got the Starstone?
Go ahead, Bear.
You guys do have 1 Starstone. Bear has.
Yeah.
All right.
He wears it around his neck. It's totally appropriate.
What about the Shub Niggurath medallions? Oh, that probably traveled to Malta with the other guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, with all the books and everything else.
All the pieces of the disc.
All right. So you take your truck out. It's going to be October 23rd.
Ronaldo's excited, man. He's never driven in the United States. This is awesome. Gets behind the wheel and cranks up the Ford. He's like, oh, I've never driven a Ford. Throws it in gear.
He's excited about it all.
Tears out of there.
It's brand new, man. You buy it right off the lot.
Loves it.
It's got like 6 miles on it.
So much better than any Italian truck. He's loving it.
Actually, that's not true. The Italians made some great fucking trucks, man.
Oh.
Well, I don't know about the 1920s. But I do know that in World War II, General Rommel in North Africa, that's what he used, man, was the fucking Italian trucks. When you see Rommel, in the pictures of him sitting in the truck and stuff, they're always Italian trucks because they're so good.
Yeah, well, they did have the automotive thing down, man, but
I mean that was the one thing about the Italian armed forces in World War II. Also, they were really sucky, but they were very mobile.
Yeah, mechanized. Their mechanized was good.
So when they sucked it up, they could run away fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, I don't want to go too far into it, but I played this Memoir 44 game that I showed you a picture of, that World War II game.
Yeah. That whole North African campaign, man, is some crazy shit. Rommel and all the things. That's a crazy. The Brits and the Americans up there. That's a nutty. It's a nutty campaign.
Yeah, Angie and I have been playing. I finally got Angie into the game, and she loves it. But you learn a lot of the historical shit going on. That's one of my favorite versions of the game to play, are the North African tank battles and shit. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, the Italians, man, they were very mobile, and actually the Italians were very brave fighters. They just their command structure, chain of command, was just really shitty.
Yeah.
It's like in the game, I think actually like Italian artillery units have this thing where they don't retreat. Like you can never get Italian artillery units to retreat. Which I guess translates to them. They were very brave fighters in North Africa during the war. So anyway, it's October 23rd. It's a Thursday, 1924. The weather is fair. You guys are driving up to Salk Harbor, Maine, up the coast. It's a rather pleasant and scenic drive. Arriving in Salk Harbor, you see a typical Maine village, and even accounting the local cannery and a lot of boats out in the harbor there. But Salk Harbor is very small, probably numbering no more than 800 or 900 souls. So it's a very small village. As you guys drive into town, there's a small business district on a street that kind of runs right out to the harbor. And individual homes are kind of set out, just sort of dotting the countryside outside of town, kind of haphazardly, a little further inland from the harbor. And
I wonder why this guy's here.
And just out of town, towards a great hill that stands west of town, sits a very large, imposing mansion up on this hill. So, the guy's name.
That's
Christopher Edwin. He said he was a wealthy man. You don't have an address for him or anything like that.
We head up to the big house, man.
Yeah.
Corso drives right up there.
Yeah, actually, as you pull into town, it's been a long drive, so you guys stop, for a meal. You're kind of hungry, and you're getting these kind of strange looks from some of these New Englanders, kind of looking at you guys. I mean, Bear's like an Indian. No, some of these guys, most of these people have probably never even seen a Native American. So you guys are getting some looks. Corso's got his fancy mustache and shit like that, and a couple people try to strike up conversations like, "Hey, where are you from?" kind of a thing. And during these conversations, one of you brings up like this, we're here to see this Edwin guy, and indeed they verify, that, oh yes, the manse on the hill, that's the home of Christopher Edwin. Poor fellow, they tell you.
Poor
Poor
fellow.
fellow.
Why would
Yeah,
you say such thing?
What's gone wrong with Mr. Edwin?
Well, the fisherman that you're talking to, he just kind of looks at you kind of askance. He says, well, years ago he says some time ago, the folk around here believe he was afflicted with some sort of malady. He doesn't leave the mansion, and in fact, I believe that few of the townsfolk have ever even seen him.
Suspicion rising.
He's bound to a wheelchair, he tells you. Doesn't say much more than that.
Yeah.
Bear makes a middle note.
Well, no, after he leaves and we're by ourselves, I say, well, he probably was attacked, It's probably been damaged some way by some kind of spell, right? Bear's like,
wonders Dr.
No.
What could have happened to him?
Yeah.
He's just been in touch with the Lord of the Silver Twilight. He must die.
Has he been infected with worms?
That's possible. Maybe that's possible.
I don't think you could call any of the things that happen with the worms an infection. That's an invasion of worms.
All right, so you guys have a nice lunch of, cod and biscuits and some tea.
Non-wormy food.
And you drive up to the mansion and pull your truck up the hill, and park in front of the mansion, and get out of the truck. And it's quite an imposing place. It's like 3 stories. It's like maybe 200 feet long. It's just the front of it is just kind of speckled with windows. It's gigantic. And it has this very large, kind of imposing, Gothic-looking green door with intricate lattice work and shit all around, with these Roman columns coming up off the ground in front of it.
This guy must have servants.
So we'll walk up to the front door. Corso will knock.
As you walk up to the front door and go to knock, the door opens. Click. Kind of creaks a little bit, seemingly by itself.
So Corso will push the door open.
You hear this voice. Come in. Enter.
So Corso does. Hello.
All right, Bear will follow him in.
All right. So it opens up into this large foyer, and you see like fine art kind of lining the walls, marble floor. You see this marble staircase going to the upper floor in front of you, and off to the side, out of a chamber, emerges this elderly, pale man who's confined to a wheelchair, and he's kind of rolling himself out towards you guys. And he says, I see you have found your way in. He says, I've installed a new electrical opening device so that I can open it from within my chamber by merely flipping a switch. Oh, the wonders of modern technology, he says.
Impressive.
He's like, he kind of coughs. He really does look kind of pale and sickly looking, this guy.
Bear tries to get a read on this guy just by giving him the once over, kind of like trying to get his vibe.
He's very gaunt. He can't weigh more than 80 pounds. And he's got this kind of cover over his lap, and it's like a quilt.
What do we say? We
That's where the tentacles are, under the quilt.
Yeah, we received your letter.
He says, "Oh yes, of course. Regarding the Silver Twilight."
Yes, that's correct.
And he kind of
they are a problem.
He kind of rolls his wheelchair right up to you, and he extends his hand and says, "I am Christopher Edwins. Very pleased to meet you, Mr." As he extends his hands to shake your hand.
Yeah, Ronaldo Corso.
Mr. Corso.
Yes, I introduced myself.
And this would be, and he looks at Bear, kind of like, see, Bear's used to having people look at him funny. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of like he gets a lot of these, these white Anglo folks. They'll kind of recoil away from you and just casual conversation. It's 1920s, right?
Bro, yeah.
But Mr. Edwin is just like, and you would be just very actually kind of pleasantly and cordially.
So I just extend my hand, Bear.
Bear? A nickname? I see. He says, "Well, gentlemen, if you'd accompany me to my study, we can talk." And he kind of
let's go.
Kind of struggles a little bit as he's turning his wheelchair around.
I'll help him, man. I'm like, oh, let me help you.
He has a little coughing fit.
Yeah, I'm like, Corso helps him. He's like, I'm a doctor. If you need anything, please let me know. He'll take the wheelchair and he'll.
Okay. As you're pushing him, down the hallway into the study, he says, "I fell sick several months ago and lost the power to walk."
What as a result of what? Is that just your age? Was it something to do with your investigation of the Silver Twilight?
He says, No, nothing of the sort. I'm just getting old, He says, he looks at the, as you guys enter his study, which is lavishly furnished. He looks at the clock and he says, "Oh, it's almost supper time." He says, "Miss Brown should have supper ready soon." He said, "Would you gentlemen care to refresh yourselves? I have some rooms upstairs that you could use to refresh yourself if you wish before supper."
I think we'll just. I'm good.
Well, we are in a bit of a time crunch, Corso says.
At that moment, you see this woman, middle-aged woman, in this sort of calico frock and a wool shawl comes in.
Frau Bueller.
Yeah. And she's kind of frowning as she walks. You hear her heels clacking on the marble as she approaches you. She says, "Mr. Edwin, supper will be served in 20 minutes. Will your guests be joining us?" And she kind of frowns at you.
Corso says, "Yes, that's right. We'll be joining."
He's like,
Bear
"Yes."
frowns back at her.
He says, "Yes, Mrs. Brown, they'll be joining us. What are we having?" She says, "Stew." And you see, you kind of look back at Edwin, and he kind of makes this face like, oh.
Shit.
Shit.
And she leaves, and he makes a comment. He says, my appetite's been rather poor lately, says.
Bear pulls out a little beef jerky and starts chewing on it.
Corso says, is it the quality of the cooking that sours your appetite?
Says, yes, it might have something to do with it. Oh, she's not too bad, you know. He says, gentlemen, if you don't mind, I'm feeling rather fatigued at the moment. Perhaps we can talk over supper. I have a pain in my groin, he says.
I hate to even suggest it, but does he need to be examined?
No, I get this. It's cursed with the gout, you see.
Okay.
Gout in the groin?
Do you are you getting good medical advice?
Yes, nothing nothing to worry about, Dr. Corso.
Okay.
I'll be fine.
Bear thinks you've dodged a major bullet by not having to give this guy a groin inspection.
And he's got
on your first meeting with him.
And he's got his hands. He's got this quilt on his lap, and his arms are kind of like rigidly like in position, like his hands are on his lap, you know, and you can see he is kind of doubled over like this, and he seems to be kind of putting pressure on like his belly or groin or something. He really does look like he's in a little bit of pain.
Yeah, I'm like, I do have some morphine.
It'll pass. And he kind of waves his hand at, you know, it'll pass.
All right, so his hands.
He says, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I will see you at supper. The dining hall is down through the library. He says, if you would like to freshen up, there's rooms upstairs with wash basins and all that, water closet, whatever you should need. If you'll excuse me. And he kind of painfully rolled himself away through a door. Now, I should point out, like, the opulence of the place is amazing. I mean, this guy is fabulously wealthy. I mean, you can see rare artworks, you know, and Chinese vases and shit, and it's just full of. This place is made of money. And as you're standing there, you do kind of catch a whiff of something cooking, you know, from the kitchen. It actually smells pretty good. Something beefy. Bear's like, stomach grumbles a little bit.
Sweet, man. So I guess we'll go upstairs and clean up a little bit and come back down to the dining room.
All right, we're at about session end here, but we're going to have Christopher Edwin give you a little story here, okay, at supper time, and then we'll end the session. And you guys can read along with me here if you want. Let me make sure I'm on the right page here. Where is it? Oops, what happened? Let's play something a little more pleasant here. Oh. Hold on. All right. There he is. All right. So he says, the reason I have summoned you here, Dr. Corso and Mr. Bear, 50 years ago, a man named Clarence Woody lived north of town, and he had a reputation for being an evil and vengeful man. Hold on a second. I don't like that. He's an evil and vengeful man. He would kick dogs to death for snapping at him. He would poison a neighbor's sheep if it stepped onto his land. He never married, but adopted 3 boys from the county orphanage. He raised them in his evil ways, and they were as wicked as he, I dare say. When he suddenly died, the boys found a tin box stuffed with money under the bed. They claimed that they had come upon it by accident. The townsfolk, of course, did not believe the story, and neither did the police, who arrested the lads on a charge of smothering their foster father for his money. All 3 were hanged, and they were in their early 20s by then, and they were buried in unmarked graves. Then a strange thing happened. The person who bought the Woody house was found dead with a rope burn about his throat, as if he had been hung. Only he was found lying in his bed with no rope at hand. Later on, several people, including 2 tramps, also died in that house, their throats mysteriously marked by rope, as though from a hangman's knot. I think, and I feel you may agree with me, that the damned spirits of Woody's boys lingered about that house, murdering whoever stayed there too long. Finally, no one would enter that house, and it fell into disrepair, and thus it remained for over 40 years. But last year, a person came to town who had once belonged to the Silver Twilight. The Silver Twilight! And he bought the land. And he bought the land on which the old house stood. He did not sleep in the place, but the villagers whispered that he performed strange acts there, and that he was trying to invoke or tame the haunts that lived there. His name was Malcolm Smith. In any case, before I fell sick, I spied on him, trying to converse with the house's ghosts, and when I saw the wraiths themselves speak with him, I fainted dead away. And he kind of looks at you like, with like the "Do you believe me?" look.
Oh, we look back with the
I
"We
shake my
believe
head
you."
in understanding. Yeah.
Well, he's kind of got this crazy look in his eyes at this point. I contacted you because I've guessed what Mr. Smith was trying to do. He realized that the haunts had a powerful magical aura, and he was trying to tap it for some magical act. He was actually weakening the ghosts, not to destroy them, but to steal their energy to perform magic.
Oh,
Smith
stealing
disappeared
energy.
just before I fell ill, and even though weakened, the specters managed to destroy the man who was vampirizing them. When I listened to their conversation, this is what I heard.
Oh.
Ye fiends of night, ye ghosts of the damned dead, ye spirits of evil and sin, come, come and yield up your criminal power to me. Free your weakening resolve from this place of your crimes and release your energy. Reinforce me with the magic and power of your being. I must wax and you must wane. Strengthen me at your despair. That is what Malcolm Smith chanted. Then the faint ghost of a man, its head lolling at one side as though the neck was cracked, appeared. Depart from us, said the ghost. Leave us be. Cease tormenting our pains and anguish. Leave us or let us feast upon your fear as we have done to others. Sacrifice yourself to our hunger or depart from our horror. At this point, Malcolm suddenly turned away, and the ghost gave a mournful wail, and I fainted. Would you please take up where I left off? The ghosts are weaker now. Not even the villagers at their most superstitious now feel that they are active. They still may be able to harm you, so take care. If Mr. Smith did indeed die in that haunted house, he may have left interesting manuscripts or incriminating data about the organization he devoted his life to, the Silver Twilight. I found out about his membership in the Silver Twilight when I saw Carl Stanford.
What?
Oh.
Yes, you know of him.
Oh, yes.
Embarrassment
so.
out of Parma soup.
Of course, in certain circles, he has been mentioned as an important principal in the Silver Twilight. Speaking with him 3 weeks before Smith disappeared, I did not find out who Carl Stanford was until a month ago. Please, gentlemen, help me. I am wealthy, and I wish my last acts to be good ones. Perhaps I can be instrumental in destroying the Silver Twilight, and thus saving the world from the evil that will surely descend upon it if they triumph.
Agreed.
Wow.
We're happy to receive your help.
He says, from what I know of this Carl Stanford and his friends of this group, we all must be vigilant in destroying the Silver Twilight.
Yeah, man, I'll raise my glass to that. Corso says, here, here. Raises his glass. We all toast that. Ching.
So he reaches out to get his wine glass, and he kind of lives up to it, and he accidentally drops it. And it falls onto the table and tips over, and wine spills all over it. He goes, oh, goodness, Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Brown comes stamping in. She's like, oh, Christopher, not again. She starts cleaning up. He does seem kind of like, doesn't move very well. So, yeah, that's where we'll end the session. And that's where we'll kick off next time.
Oh, boy.
Cool.
Mrs. Brown cleaning.
And, of course, Tom's character, Mr. Blackwood, has been present the whole time. So we'll just have to assume, all of the witty remarks, in the whole conversation coming from Mr. Blackwood. Like, what is wrong with you, man? Are you okay? All right,
Carl Stanford, huh? Ugh.
Yeah, Carl Stanford.
Stanford.
He says, I found out about his membership in the Silver Twilight when I saw Carl Stanford, who has been mentioned as an important principal in the Silver Twilight, speaking with him 3 weeks before Smith disappeared.
This guy didn't speak to him. He just spoke. He just knows that he spoke to.
Yeah, he spoke to Malcolm
Smith.
Yes. Mr. Edwin claims that he saw Carl Stanford speaking with Edwin Smith. So apparently Carl Stanford was here in Salk Harbor.
How does he know who? Well, we'll ask next week, but.
Well, he says he did not find out who Carl Stanford was until after.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. I'm going to let you go. It's getting late. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Good game, man. That was
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. I really enjoyed the manual.
Yeah, I will post that to Discord along with the video. Unfortunately, I started recording a little bit late. I think I missed about the first 5 minutes of the manuscript, but the rest of the session should have recorded. But I will post that in Discord along with the last video, and the next time we talk should be in Denver.
Yeah. We'll take a look at everybody's schedule, like when everybody's arriving, and try to kind of coordinate that a little bit.
Yeah.
Where we can meet.
As far as I know you, Lee, you, Kyle, and me, we're all arriving almost around the same time. I'm not sure about Tom. So.
Perfect.
Should be good.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you won't be able to miss us. It'll be me and my gargantuan son. He looks like Sasquatch, so you can't miss him.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So.
That's awesome.
All right, guys.
It's gonna be good. All right, yeah. Have a good night.
It's gonna be awesome. Good night.
All right,
Good night,
gentlemen.
guys.
Good night.